Hello there, it's Paul here and welcome everyone. A totally different sort of video this time. I'm going to be looking at some of the oils I've got for a finish so I can do a comparison to see how they turn out. I've already turned these, I suppose, little cups or goblets. I will show a video in the corner just briefly of doing it. They're all made from the one piece of wood. Started off with one large piece of wood, took it all down, cut it into three pieces, and then basically just turned the three little cups. I've also used the chestnut spirit stains just to colour the inside of the cup, because I want to see what sort of effect oil has on the colouring as well. I don't use oils very often. Probably the most common one I use is the lemon oil from Chestnut Products. I'm not going to be using that in this video. It doesn't really add a sheen or anything, it just absorbs into the wood and it does smell really nice, and you can top it up from time to time. But the three oils I'm looking at, I've got here on the bench in front of the cups. So I've got some boiled linseed oil here. I've had this years, I really have. The lid is often a nightmare to undo. Every time you'll see it all gums up. Linseed oil, so you can get the raw linseed oil as well. It comes from the seed of the linseed flax plant. Don't know what it is or where it comes from. Boiled linseed oil has actually had additives added to it. I believe it's also had some hot air run through it. The idea is that it actually dries a lot quicker than raw linseed oil. Now the one I've been mainly using in the last probably 3 or 4 videos is the pure tongue oil. On the back here it says pure tongue oil is made from the processed seed of the Chinese tongue nut tree. No additives or anything, it's just pure oil in there. Third one I've got as well, which I don't use very often either, is Danish oil. There's lots of companies out there which make Danish oil. The idea is basically Danish oil is pure tongue oil with a load of additives in it to help it dry a lot quicker. The one thing you have to be careful about with Danish oil is that often not some of those additives in there can actually be quite highly flammable. So it's always suggested that when you've used your cloth to apply it, you actually lay it out all open so that it dries a lot easier. There has been some cases where people have actually just screwed up the cloth, thrown it in a bin, and it spontaneous combusts. Now I can't say that I've ever known or seen one of them do it, but it's just a precaution you really want to take. And that also applies to the boiled linseed oil, which it has the warning on the back of it as well. So just be careful when you use some of these mixed oils which have got the additives in. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to apply each of these oils to one of these cups I've made, and I want to see what it comes up like with each coat as I go along. So I've already taken a photograph which I'll show on the screen now of what these cups are like. All I've had done to them is they've been turned, they've been sanded to 600 grit and had the colour applied to them. I'm going to use just a piece of kitchen towel for applying each one of these, and I'm going to do the outside of the cup first of all, and then I'll do the inside of the cup last, so I can then see if there's actually any colour being pulled from it. Also left, really what's left, because some of this wood was cracked anyway, left what I can on here as a tenon, so that if I have to put it back on the lathe just to sort of try and knock this back up some point, then at least I've got that option. So the boiled linseed oil first of all, just going to put some on the cloth there, trying to make sure that I'm being gentle so that I don't pick up any of the gummy bits that's on there. And I don't know how well that shows in the camera there, but I'll just show on that camera as well, it's come up with a slight yellow colour to it, which is what you would expect, probably bringing out the colour of the wood. So get that one applied. The outside on that actually looks quite nice. So use the same piece of cloth, and in fact what I'm going to do, I'm just going to fold that up a bit like that, just so it's a little bit smaller, and apply this on the middle. Now this actually isn't a black, it's actually the wood colours from spirit stains, from Chestnut Spirit Stains. It was the dark Jacobean, so it's obviously just looks black. So I can see on there is absolutely nothing coming off there. So the next one is the pure tung oil, and I've used this just recently, so the top does come off nice and easy. Again, it's got really all the dried pieces on the edges. So another piece of clean cloth. So coloration on that one, I would say, is similar to the boiled linseed oil, possibly not quite so yellow at the moment. Do the inside. You can see that has really brought out some blue off it. That's probably why it's a good idea to do the coloured parts last, and it will be interesting if I put more coats on how much this will seal this up. Last but not least, the Danish oil, and I just need to probably give this a little bit of a shake because it's not been used for quite some time. I would say again, it's got a little bit of yellow tinge to it, which is probably where it's just the wood colour coming out. Probably not quite as much as the boiled linseed oil. Do the inside to see if, so again I'm getting red coming off there, so that also pulls the colouring off there. That's all three given one coat. Now I've got to say, the boiled linseed oil has already literally absorbed into the wood and looks almost dry fairly quickly. The tung oil, as expected, it's got a bit of a sheen to it at the moment, showing that it's not really dry. And obviously I've literally just done the Danish oil. So I'd say, comparison wise at the moment, they're all looking very similar. I'll then come back, whether it be in 24 hours time or a few days time, to see what they're like when hopefully that is now cured, get some more pictures, and then see about building up extra coats. I've left all of these now about a week. Odour wise, the boiled linseed oil and the tung oil have a very, very faint odour to them, whereas the Danish oil still has quite a fair odour to it. All of these look, I'd say, almost identical as far as the oil finish has gone on there so far. If there's anything different, the Danish oil has a slight bit more gloss to it than the tung oil, and the tung oil has probably a very, very slight bit more gloss to it than the boiled linseed oil. So there's very, very little between the three of them. The one difference that I can say on all of these is these two are actually still quite smooth. The inside is a little bit more coarse because it's gone straight into the end grain, but the Danish oil is a lot more coarse all around the whole thing. So what I'm going to do first of all, I'm just going to, for what I've got left of a tenon there, remount these in the chuck, and I'm just going to use this to knock them back a little bit, so just to take off anything that might be on there rough wise, and if the grain has risen a bit, it hopefully may well resolve that as well. And now, as smooth as it was when I sanded that originally at 600 grit, so just knocked them back all with the knife web, and you can see they're not so much sure whether that one was from the blue, but some of it has come out from the blue, and there is a little bit of red come out of there as well, so it has pulled some of the colour off the top, and I think that's just where the grain has risen and it's just knocked that back, which contained the colour. And the interesting thing as well is that really how these are finished, because knocking it back with the Abranet, that has not really changed whatsoever, other than it's just given that a little bit more smoothness. The black has gone a slight off a bit, the blue very, very little change, and again just knocked that back. There's still a little bit of coarseness inside from all three of these where the grain is raised because of the end grain, but it's the red which shows up more of where it's sort of discoloured. So I've got some more cloths again, and I'm going to give these now a second coat. And I can see there's a little bit of black in there, but that might be because I've knocked it back with a nye web and it's just the remnants of what's left in there. So again, it's bringing out the blue straight on the cloth, but that might be because the dust that was left in there from knocking back with a nye web. But as you can see, there's quite a lot come off there. So I'm going to do the outside of this one first. And as expected, it's got some of the colour from there again. So I'll now leave all three of them to cure again. Now been another 24 hours and these three egg cups, mini goblets, whatever you want to call them, have now had 2 coats of oil. And I've got to say there's very little difference as far as the finish is concerned. They all look pretty similar. This one with the Danish oil has got a slight gloss to it, but it had that after the first coat. But inside, when you look inside, if you catch the light right, for any reflectiveness in there, they all look very similar. Like after the first coat, still with the second coat, the boiled linseed oil is very smooth, same as the tung oil. Danish oil has some coarseness where it's still effectively raising the grain. So I'm going to give these a third coat, but before I do again, I'm going to do as I did last time, stick them on the lathe just to gently knock it back a little bit with the nye web again. So I'll leave those to dry again now. They've now had 3 coats. It's probably going to be several days now before I come back and have a look at these again. These have now had 3 coats on them, and it's been just about a week since I last did this. And I've got to say, the boiled linseed oil is actually quite smooth. It's probably not quite as smooth as the tung oil. The Danish oil has got a lot more roughness in it. Now that could well be because it's quite old, and the actual oil is starting to sort of like clag up a little bit, creating all those little bits. Finish wise on all of these, I mean, I don't know how well it shows on the camera there. I will rotate these around a bit so that hopefully you'll catch the light on there. The Danish oil one has probably the most gloss to it. It's got a bit of a sheen to it, whereas the tung oil and the boiled linseed oil I'd say are very, very similar. I'll show the photos that I've took so far. So we've got the first picture from where it had no finish, then with 1 coat, 2 coats, and now with the 3 coats. And I don't think really there's much change throughout the whole thing. What I want to do now is I'm going to just probably over the next probably 2 or 3 weeks build up another 2 or 3 coats on these. I've now applied 5 coats of these oils over a course of probably maybe about 5-6 weeks, so they've had plenty of time to dry in between each coat. Hopefully you can see on the camera here what the results are like now. So the first one here, which is the boiled linseed oil, has a very matte effect on it. It's almost picking up a slight bit of sheen on the end grain. Now the tung oil on this has got a slight sheen to it on the outside and really on the end grain as well, so it's pretty uniform all throughout. The Danish oil has a very slight gloss to it, and hopefully this is showing up on the camera here. The end grain is a little bit more glossier than probably the side grain. But what I will say though, the biggest difference of all that I can see between these oils is really the finish on them. The boiled linseed oil, for starters, is still come up quite smooth throughout. Now the tung oil, I've got to say, is the smoothest out of the lot. I can feel slight raised grain inside, but the outside is as smooth as it was probably from when I sanded it all back. The Danish oil, I've got to say, is very, very bitty. That could be due to the time I've actually had the product. All of these products I've had a number of years, so they're probably anywhere up to about 5 years old. So the boiled linseed oil, to starters, it says on the back here it's got a shelf life of 24 months. So it's done pretty well. Tung oil, because it's a natural product, there's no shelf life on this. So it's just as good as it was probably from the day I first bought it. Yes, where it's sort of got the air, it does sort of like harden up and it creates those sort of like lumps. Danish oil, I've got the Hampshire Sheen one, and on here it does say on the back, used within 6 months of purchase for best results. So to summarise on how I feel about the three products, to me, as a personal choice, I much prefer the pure tung oil. It's a total natural product. So there's no additives gone into it, so it should be literally the same as it was from the point it was actually extracted to create the oil. It does take a little bit longer to dry, but again, all the products could take a reasonable amount of time to dry depending on the environment you got them in. It doesn't give a totally matte finish. If you want a matte finish, you can just put one coat on it, but again, it really depends on your material, what you're putting it on, as to what sort of reflection it gives. So the only downside really for what I see for the tung oil is it doesn't have an additive to help it dry quicker. On the flip side of that, Danish oil is actually made from tung oil as well, so it's precisely that, but loads of other additives in there. So all of these additives are there to sort of like help dry a lot quicker, and in this case produce that more glossy finish. Now the boiled linseed oil again has additives in it, very much like with the Danish oil, just to help it dry quicker. Like with all finishes, everybody's going to have their own personal preference. This was just some form of an experiment just to compare how the three go on, how they produce their sort of like their finishes and their end results. So it'll be interesting to hear your thoughts on these as well. But for me, I think the tung oil is really the winner on this, in my own eyes. Thanks a lot for watching.